There's a certain kind of car that shows up on used lots priced $1,000 under everything around it. The salesman calls it a bargain. After 22 years turning wrenches, I call it what it is, a car the trade-in pipeline already gave up on. Here's what nobody walking that lot has any way of knowing. Some of the most familiar cars of the last 15 years have federal recalls, class action lawsuits, and court settlements sitting behind them. And none of that paperwork is taped to the windshield. The dealer knows. The auction house knows. The only person left out of the conversation is the one signing the loan. Every car on today's list earned its place with paperwork. Recall campaigns, service bulletins, courtrooms, not forum gossip, and not brand grudges. Paper. Today I'm giving you the 9 used cars I'd never let a friend buy. The exact years, the exact part that fails, and the real repair bills. So nobody gets to laugh all the way to the bank on your money. That sedan on the thumbnail is number 1 on this list. Behind it sits the largest engine settlement in automotive history, over $1 billion, and a federal fine that broke records. Stay for that whole story, because there's a decent chance someone you know is driving one right now. Let's count them down. Number 9, 2015 to 2016 Jeep Renegade. The Renegade came out looking like a cheerful little off-roader. Underneath, it was a rushed Fiat platform with an electrical system that never got sorted out. These are the cars that come into the shop on a hook because they refuse to start in a grocery store parking lot. The battery drains flat after sitting 2 or 3 days. The engine cranks fine on Tuesday and won't turn over on Thursday, and there's no warning light to tell you why. I've watched these sit at dealerships for weeks while the techs chased a ghost through the wiring. Some went home unfixed, started fine for a month, and came right back on the same hook. Here's the hidden truth. Jeep never issued one clean fix because there isn't one fault to fix. The problem is scattered across the body control module, the grounds, and the software. You can't recall your way out of a design problem. The electrical system has company too. The 9-speed automatic in these years shipped before its software was finished, harsh downshifts, hesitation pulling into intersections, and dealers reflashing the programming again and again while owners waited for a version that finally behaved. The cruelest part is the timing. These failures don't wait for high mileage. They show up whenever the gremlin feels like it, which is why so many Renegades hit the used market young, with suspiciously low miles and a fresh detail. Chasing an intermittent electrical fault runs $500 to $900 in diagnostic time alone before a single part goes on the car. Plenty of owners paid that bill twice and still got stranded. If you're looking at a used Renegade from these years, ask for the service history and count the visits. More than one electrical complaint in the file. Walk away. There are CR-Vs and RAV4s sitting on the same lot that will outlive it twice over. Number 8, 2013 to 2016 Dodge Dart. The Dart was supposed to be Dodge's comeback compact. Instead, it burned oil, lost power on the highway, and got discontinued so fast the support went with it. Owners of the later cars reported the engine cutting out at speed. Full power 1 second, coasting on the shoulder the next. The same cars drink oil fast enough that a crankcase filled at the start of the month runs low before the next fill-up. Some Darts paired that engine with a dual dry-clutch automatic that shudders and hunts its way through traffic. The same species of transmission as the Ford disaster coming up later on this list. 2 documented problems wearing 1 badge. Put it next to the car it competed with. A Mazda 3 rolls through the shop at 110,000 miles needing brake pads and a set of plugs. A Dart with the same miles comes through needing an engine, and a replacement runs $3,900 to $6,000 on a car that isn't worth that on its best day. The hidden truth is that Fiat Chrysler killed the Dart in 2016 and walked away. When the manufacturer abandons a car, the parts pipeline thins out, the dealer expertise evaporates, and the owner inherits the whole problem. They built it, they buried it, and the used market got handed the shovel. Don't take it. The same money buys that Mazda 3 or a Corolla. A car you keep, not a car you feed. Number 7, 2011 to 2015 Chevy Cruze with the 1.4-liter turbo. On paper, this engine was Chevy's answer to high gas prices, a small 4-cylinder with a turbo doing the heavy lifting. In the real world, it's a cooling system failure with a car attached. The water pump seeps, the plastic thermostat housing cracks, the coolant hoses give up early, and the crankcase ventilation system is molded into the valve cover. So, when a small rubber diaphragm inside it tears, you're buying the entire cover. None of these parts fails alone. Heat from one leak cooks the plastic around it, and the next piece lets go a few months later. Here's a challenge you can run yourself this weekend. Walk up to any used cruise from these years, pop the hood, and look at the coolant reservoir. If the level is low or there's dried orange crust around the hose necks, that car is already mid-failure. The seller just hasn't mentioned it. There's a second check that costs nothing. Start it cold, let it idle, and put your nose near the vents. A sweet, syrupy smell in the cabin means coolant is already escaping somewhere hot, and owners of these cars reported exactly that symptom for years. Each round of this costs $750 to $1,400, and I've seen the same cruise back for a second round inside 18 months. That's not a repair. That's a subscription. General Motors packed hot turbo plumbing into a tight bay full of cheap plastic, and every one of these cars eventually pays for that decision, with your money, not theirs. Number 6. 2007 to 2013 Mini Cooper. The Mini sells on charm, and charm is expensive to keep on the road. These years carry a timing chain tensioner that backs off and lets the chain slap its guides. Mechanics call the sound the death rattle, a diesel-like clatter for the first few seconds of a cold start. I can stand in the parking lot on a cold morning and pick out the Minis with dying chains before the owners reach the front door. That rattle is the chain eating its own guides, and once the plastic breaks apart, the pieces drop into the oil pan and the tensioner loses what little grip it had. The hidden truth is that this engine came out of a joint venture built to a price, and the chain system was the corner that got cut. BMW dressed it in a premium badge and charged premium labor to fix its own shortcut. The engine bay makes it worse. Everything is packed so tight that jobs measured in minutes on a Corolla are measured in hours on a Mini, and every one of those hours bills at a European rate. Catch it early, and the chain, guides, and tensioner run $800 to $1,500. Ignore the rattle, and the chain jumps time. The pistons meet the valves, and you're not repairing that engine anymore. You're shopping for one. A used Mini with no receipts for chain work isn't a quirky little runabout. It's a countdown. Number 5. 2010 to 2017 Chevy Equinox with the 2.4-liter engine. This one doesn't fail loud. It fails quiet, and quiet is worse. The 2.4 in these Equinoxes burns oil past the piston rings with no smoke out the tailpipe and no warning light until the level is already dangerously low. Low oil starves the timing chain. The chain stretches, and a stretched chain on this engine is the beginning of the end. Here's the part General Motors never put in a commercial. They quietly extended coverage for oil consumption on the early cars to 7 years or 120,000 miles. Car companies don't extend warranties out of generosity. They extend them because the failure rate left them no choice. Look at what the fix under that coverage actually was. New pistons and rings. Dealerships were rebuilding the bottom ends of engines that were barely broken in. And when the repair goes that deep, the problem was never maintenance. It was the metal. The oil life monitor made everything worse. It cheerfully told owners they had thousands of miles left on the oil while the crankcase ran dry underneath it. The monitor tracks time and driving conditions, not the level, and the level was the whole problem. A retired railroad worker in Knoxville, Tennessee, brought me his 2012 Equinox after he noticed it was down 2 full quarts between changes. He'd spent his working life checking gauges, so he caught it. The chain was already rattling on cold starts, and the repair came to somewhere between $2,200 and $3,800 depending on what the teardown found. That habit of his saved the engine. Most owners never look, and the first symptom they get is the last one the engine gives. If you've owned one of these, drop a comment below. Tell me how much oil yours drank between changes. The numbers people post under videos like this say more than any brochure ever did. At least the Equinox gives you a fighting chance on the dipstick. The next one fails somewhere you can't check at all. Number 4. 2013 to 2019 Ford Escape with the small EcoBoost engines. Ford downsized the Escape's engines to chase fuel economy numbers. A lawnmower engine with a turbo, doing the work a V6 used to do without breaking a sweat. The result is an engine that runs hot by design, and on these Escapes, coolant finds its way where coolant must never go, into the cylinders. The pattern walks into the shop the same way every time. The coolant reservoir keeps dropping with no puddle on the driveway. A cold start misfire that smooths out once it warms up. White smoke on startup that the seller calls condensation. By the time those symptoms show, the engine is consuming its own coolant, and the endgame is a cracked block, a hydro-locked cylinder, or in the worst cases, an engine fire, which is exactly what the recalls were about. The 2013 model was recalled again and again in its very first year on sale. That's a brand new design being repaired on the fly, with paying customers doing the road testing. The hidden truth is what the recall fix actually was. For a lot of these cars, the remedy was a coolant level sensor and new software, a warning system bolted onto the same design. They didn't fix the engine, they gave it a smoke detector. A replacement engine runs $4,000 to $6,500, and on a 10-year-old Escape, that's more than the car. Before buying any of these, pull the Carfax for coolant complaints and check that reservoir level cold. And if the seller says it just needs a top-up now and then, thank them for the confession and leave. Bad cooling kills engines slowly. The next car on this list was broken the day it rolled off the line. Number 3. 2011 to 2016 Ford Focus and Fiesta with the PowerShift transmission. Ford built the PowerShift as a dry dual clutch, a computer-operated manual pretending to be an automatic with no fluid bath to cushion the clutches. From nearly new, these cars shudder pulling away from a stop, lurch at parking lot speeds, and hesitate so long merging into traffic that owners learned to pray at on-ramps. When owners brought them in, plenty of dealerships sent them home with the same line. The transmission is operating as designed, which was technically true. That was the whole problem. Consumer Reports rated it one of the worst transmissions ever put in a production car. Court documents and news investigations later showed Ford knew about the problems early and kept building them for years anyway. That's the difference between a mistake and a decision. A clutch pack and control module job runs $1,300 to $2,500, and here's the insult. The replacement parts carry the same design, so plenty of owners paid that bill and watched the shudder come back. Ford paid out through a class action settlement over these cars. The settlement money is long gone. The cars are still on the lots. There is no version of this transmission that stays fixed. Walk away and let it be someone else's science experiment. Quick reminder, if this list is keeping money in your pocket, hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, and it keeps videos like this coming. Because if you think knowingly selling a bad transmission is as low as it goes, hold on. The number 1 car on this list comes from a company the federal government fined at record levels over how it handled its engines, and we're 2 cars away from it. Number 2, 2013 to 2018 Nissan Altima. The Altima's problem has a name, and by now most of you have heard it, the CVT. Instead of gears, this transmission runs a steel belt squeezed between 2 pulleys, and everything depends on that belt never slipping. Heat makes it slip. Highway summers, stop-and-go traffic, towing a utility trailer, all of it cooks the fluid, and cooked fluid is how a CVT dies. Owners describe the same arc every time. A shudder around town, then a whine on the highway, then one day the engine revs and the car simply stops pulling. 2 sedans come through the shop the same month, both around 130,000 miles. The Accord shifts like it did the day it was sold and leaves with an oil change. The Altima leaves on a flatbed because the belt let go. And a replacement CVT runs $3,600 to $5,500 on a car worth less than the low end of that range. Same miles, same roads. One car was engineered to reach old age, and one was engineered to reach the end of the warranty. Here's what makes it worse. A CVT lives and dies on its fluid, and these cars left the factory with owners told next to nothing about changing it. The maintenance schedule treated a heat-sensitive transmission like it ran on good intentions. The hidden truth is that Nissan had already quietly extended CVT warranties on earlier models when the failures piled up, and then kept putting the same basic design in the Altima, the Sentra, and the Rogue for another decade. The lawsuits followed, and the used market is where those cars all ended up. The rest of the family tells the same story. The Sentra's version juddered badly enough that Nissan issued service bulletins and extended its transmission warranty, and Rogues built a reputation for overheating the unit on long grades and cutting power to protect itself halfway up the hill. If the number 1 car sounds like it can't top a transmission that strands people on the interstate, stay with me. Number 1 comes with a fire risk. Number 1, 2011 to 2019 Hyundai Sonata and Kia Optima with the Theta engine family. That's the sedan on the thumbnail. And here's the story I promised you. During manufacturing, metal debris from machining the crankshaft was left behind in the oil passages. Those passages feed the connecting rod bearings, and a starved rod bearing wears, knocks, and then lets go entirely. When it lets go, the engine seizes. Sometimes it punches a rod through the block, dumps oil on hot metal, and the car burns, parked in a driveway or rolling down the highway. This wasn't a rumor. A federal court approved a settlement worth up to $1.3 billion, covering roughly 4 million Hyundai and Kia vehicles, Sonatas, Optimas, and their SUV cousins, the Santa Fe, Sorento, Sportage, and Tucson. Regulators hit the 2 companies with civil penalties that broke federal records because the recalls came years after the complaints did. Read that timeline again. Owners reported seized engines and fires, and the paperwork moved slower than the tow trucks. It took an engineer inside the company reporting to federal regulators before the full picture came out. When your own people are going to the government, the problem was never a mystery in the boardroom. An out-of-warranty engine replacement on one of these runs $5,500 to $9,000. On a pension, that's not a repair bill, that's a forced car payment. Here's what the settlement bought owners: an extended warranty out to 15 years or 150,000 miles for rod bearing failure, tied to a free knock sensor software update that listens for the bearing starting to die. That coverage transfers to the next owner, but only if the software update was actually done, and only for the bearing failure it was written for. If someone in your family already owns one of these, don't panic. Act. The knock sensor update is installed free at the dealer. The recall status takes 2 minutes to check by VIN, and having both done is the difference between a covered engine and a 5-figure surprise, which tells you everything about buying one used. You'd be trusting that a previous owner did the paperwork, that the sensor catches the knock in time, and that your particular engine isn't the one that goes from quiet to seized between oil changes. I don't gamble with engines that have a court file thicker than the owner's manual. Neither should you. 9 cars and 1 pattern underneath all of them. A manufacturer cut a corner, a chain tensioner, a plastic cooling system, a dry clutch, a belt, a machining process, and the bill for that corner landed on whoever owned the car when it finally let go. The lots are full of clean-looking examples of every car on this list, priced to move. The paint doesn't know what the crankshaft did. Detailing hides a lot. Court records hide nothing. Here's my challenge to you. Before any used car gets $1 of your money, run the VIN through the Federal Recall Database, pull the service records, and check the model year against lists like this one. 10 minutes of homework against a 5-figure mistake. If a seller won't hand over service records on a car from this list, that's not an inconvenience. That's your answer. These 9 were cars that fail on their own. There's a whole other list of features, built into cars you may already own, that are quietly doing the same job from the inside. I made a video naming the 9 most dangerous ones. It's on your screen on the left. I'll see you there.